You're everything you're fighting for.
Apollo 69.
Hey guys, welcome back to a quick video for today, and this is a bonus video for you guys. And I talked about this a few months ago, I believe, where I said I was going to remake a bunch of old videos that I did when I first got the Sport Trac, which is sitting behind me. So if you're new to my channel, this is my 2003 Ford Explorer Sport Trac XLS. This has been my daily driver for almost 2 years straight, and I've come a long way with it. I made the first video of top 5 things I love and hate about my Sport Trac. It was one really long, really unnecessary video that was kind of just filmed on the, out of the blue. I didn't really script it or anything like this one, where I'm doing this all over again. So, in case you're wondering, this is actually the first video I've uploaded that I filmed entirely with my GoPro. Then tomorrow's video, which will be me putting in new tag lights, will also be filmed entirely with the GoPro. So, I know the audio is not exactly perfect, but I'm working on that. I'm going to get a mic here very soon for this camera. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so number 5 on my list of the top 5 things I hate about my Sport Trac is the interior. The interior is very cheap. I will say this quite boldly, as many Fords from this time period are very similar, very cheap interior. For example, when you get inside my truck, as you can tell, the XLS trim doesn't have power mirrors or a telescoping and adjusting steering wheel. This steering wheel is fixed. For someone like myself, who I've got thunder thighs, to be honest, when I get inside, it literally hits my legs when I'm trying to sit. But once I'm in the seat and I'm fine, it's not that big of a deal, but you know, it definitely does cause some issues. And my next gripe with the interior would be this right here, the bag of center console. This is another XLS thing, so if you're looking at an XLS in particular, don't be surprised to see this, because I believe all of the XLSs had that, not just mine. You also don't get the information center that usually sits right here in this area, in between the two sun visors. You don't get the factory subwoofer, which usually sits in the back underneath the seats with my toolboxes right now. You don't get the sunroof, which is available in XLTs. You really don't get a lot with this when you buy an XLS. And if you got another 405, you'll have the upgraded gauge cluster as well, which is always a nice feature to have, but this one just doesn't have it because it's an XLS and it's a 2003. So basically, number 5 is the interior. Like I said, it's just cheap. There's not really much else I can say. Also, another thing about the interior is this is a steering wheel cover, as you can tell. Underneath the steering wheel on the XLS is just bare plastic. There's not even leather on this. So when it gets really muggy outside, you can kind of get some slip on the steering wheel. A lot of the times when it was foggy outside, before I put the cover on, I literally slipped my hands off the steering wheel because I couldn't hold on to it. But anyway, that's my number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Okay, so number 4 is the 4.0's reliability issues. Now, the 4.0 is a very good engine. It's bulletproof most of the time. But when it goes wrong, it goes wrong hard. And the main points of complaints for this truck are not really anything structural, like cams were on the older 3.4 liter Taurus SHOs, but you do get some big issues, and one of them being a pain, which is right here, the thermostat housing. So this is probably one of the most common failure points for the Sport Trac, minus the timing chains, which is another big issue that these vehicles have. The timing cassettes like to get knocked out, and the timing chain likes to come off and start rattling, and eventually you're going to have a torn up motor. The thermostat housing is infamous because it is plastic, and a lot of older Fords from the same time period, the Sport Trac's not the only one that bites the dust from this thing. The thermostat housing is a literal pain in the butt to work on, and when they blow up, it's dramatic. As you can see, my hood liner is quite heavily stained, and that is from 2 thermostat housing failures ever since I got the vehicle in question. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you buy one of these, is to make sure you pick up a metal thermostat housing. There's a couple of brands that still make them. They're quite expensive, but it's well worth the money because you'll never have to replace another one of these again. But okay, so the next thing I want to talk about with the engine is, of course, the timing chains. Now mine, luckily, I haven't had any issues with that, knock on everything, because my motor is high mileage. It's 221,000 miles on this thing. Motor's held up incredibly well on that end, but another common complaint is the valve cover gaskets, which mine does have an issue with right now. The valve cover gaskets are literally just a pain to get to because you have to take off all this stuff right here, the distributor, caps, all that stuff. The EGR, I think this is the EGR right here. According to research, that is the EGR, but I'm not sure because I don't know a lot about EGRs. But you have to take off all of these hoses and pipes and wires and everything just to get to this one valve cover to get that gasket replaced. This side is a little more lenient, but you still have the issue because it's still, you know, kind of concealed with hoses. So the valve cover gaskets are an absolute pain to fix, and is one thing that a lot of 4.0 people don't like, and why a lot of people tend to switch to 5.0s, which I'll get on to later in this video. But the 4.0 does have its advantages. Like I said, they're bulletproof motors. They are slightly ahead of it with like technology than the 5.0 Windsor, but it's still not very fun to have. It makes mediocre power at best, but at the time it was pretty good. Nowadays it's quite slow. 210 horsepower at the crank stock. This one, counting if the advertised horsepower gain from this cold air intake is actually what it's doing, is about 231 or so. If this still had all of its factory horsepower, which is also debatable because, I mean, like I said, it's an old motor. But that's why a lot of people switch to 5.0s, is for the extra moddability and stuff, because another thing about the 4.0 that not a lot of people know is they aren't really that boost friendly without doing any sort of maintenance on the heads. A lot of people have to upgrade the head studs, have to upgrade the head gaskets to make sure that these things don't blow up, because if you go over 10 pounds of boost, you're gonna have a head gasket failure, which could lead to a destroyed motor. So that's never something you want to deal with, and that's why a lot of people have to pay to get the motor torn down and put forced internals in it, basically, to keep it from blowing up. So that's my number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Okay, so number 3 is kind of just something that bothers me more and I believe a few other sports track people. And since we're on the topic of engines, we're going to go into the lack of a 5.0 option. Now, when the Explorer Sport and the Sport Track came out, this doesn't just pertain to sports, the Sport Tracks I mean, but also sports, because it's the same platform, just with missing 2 doors and a truck bed. So the Explorer Sport lineup, whether you have a Sport Track or just a standard Sport, got kind of screwed because Ford used the platform from the 95 to 01 Explorers on these trucks and the Explorer Sport 2-door SUV. And that platform had not only the 4.0, which had the overhead valve variants, which had push rods and all that stuff, but the single cam variant like we have in mine. Now the other engine they had available for it, which was what a lot of people loved about those old Explorers and Mercury Mountaineers, was the 5.0 Windsor. Same exact motor used in the Fox Body Mustang, minus the forged crankshaft. I'm willing to bet there's more, but that's the only one I've seen to hear about is a crank. And the Sport Tracks only came with the 4.0 single cam, even though it used the same platform, was built during the same time period, right before they replaced that body style. So you would think, Ford, why didn't you put a 5.0 Windsor in this? Because its rival, the Chevrolet Avalanche, also had a V8 option. In fact, it was only a V8 truck. You could not get it with anything but that V8 motor, which was, in case you're wondering, the 5.3. So obviously there was some kind of confusion in Ford, probably, that they just thought that no one would buy the V8 variants, because this truck was more meant to be kind of the crew cab Ranger for the time period and be just kind of slotted in the middle of the Ranger and the F-150. So really, if you wanted a midsize, Ford was like, get a Sport Track or a Ranger. So that's basically how they did it. But that's my number 3. We're going to move on to number 2. Okay, so my number 2 is gas mileage. Now, a lot of people, I think, are confused when they say that 4.0s get good gas mileage. I've never seen anyone say that they have anything better than 300 miles a tank, which I usually get that in a tank and a half. So obviously, you know, Sport Tracks aren't that great on gas. It also depends on the condition of your motor. If you have good plugs, good injectors, your injectors aren't clogged, your fuel filters aren't clogged, all that stuff. Because with all that kind of stuff is going bad, you're going to have really bad gas mileage. You need to keep your engine tuned up, which is another thing I need to take care of as well, because this thing, I don't know how long it's been since it got tuned up. But that's basically another thing, is these things get horrible gas mileage. I, at one point, was getting 6 miles per gallon, and I wasn't even romping on it really hard. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you buy one of these, is your gas mileage isn't going to be what they always say it is, how good it is. It's not. It's really bad. 4.0s are notorious for being really bad on gas. So if you find any dealer articles saying that they have good gas mileage, you're lying to you. They've never had good gas mileage and never will have good gas mileage. It's really going to take a lot to get these things to go over 300 miles to a tank. So that's basically my number 2. We're finally going to move to number 1. Okay, so the final thing to mention in this video for number 1 is a lack of the XLS's features. Now, I covered this in my differences between the XLS and XLT video, but you haven't already seen, I'd recommend you go check that out, because I feel like it was a pretty good video. But, so, the XLS and XLT are very different trucks when it comes down to features. For example, the XLT has a sunroof, has fog lights, which, as you can tell, mine doesn't have either. In case you're wondering, the roof rack is deleted. I know a lot of people are probably confused as to why mine doesn't have one. But we have no fog lights here. I'm going to probably mod some in anyway very soon. I looked at a set on Car ID that I really liked that I may pick up one day. But it doesn't have fog lights. You don't have the really much to say, really. You don't have power mirrors, you don't have keyless entry. A lot of people probably wonder that why I have a keyless remote on my keys. This one, it actually is useless. I thought my truck had keyless entry. I attempted to program it several times. It does not have keyless entry. Admittedly wrong there, which is another thing I mentioned in the VIN video that I did, the Vindicator video I did. This thing does not have keyless entry at all, and it kind of sucks, but I'm working on that as well. So basically, this thing literally just has not a lot of features. Luckily for me, the 2001s came with this drum brakes in the back. I got lucky. Since I got an 03, I got discs on all the way around, which is another really cool thing that the XLS has. But another thing the XLS does not have is a tonneau cover or bed extender. Now these were both either options or standard in the XLT. I believe the bed extender was standard, the tonneau cover wasn't. But this has neither. All we have are the tie downs in the rear. Those two actually, these are front. Yeah, that one too. I both had to put in myself, so that's one thing. They were sitting actually in a cubby in the front of the truck. So, and on the interior, pretty much the same story. Not really a lot of features to go through. You get airbags and door cards and windows. That's about it. You got power locks, but you don't have keyless entry or anything. You have your power windows and stuff. No big deal there. That's pretty good stuff right there, at least. But like I said, the center console, it's a half center console, which is why the majority of the manual sport tracks in existence are XLSs, because you just don't have, like, you have the space to mount a shifter right here, but you don't get in an XLT, because the XLT is a full-length center console that goes all the way down here. Also, again, like I mentioned earlier, you don't get the compass up here in the information center. Apologize for a second. You don't get the information center right here or anything. You literally just get jack squat. You literally just get the basic stuff. You get your gauges, get a radio, you get air conditioning at least. You get your doors. You get some lighting in here. That doesn't work, obviously, so that's another thing to deal with. We've got, basically everything that we need in a modern car. Power windows, all that stuff. But you don't have a lot of the other, like, cool amenities. I can't really seem to talk today because it's kind of cold out here. But, you don't get keyless entry and all that stuff. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you are buying one, is don't expect to get keyless entry or anything, because you just flat out won't if you get an XLS, unless you're lucky. Some people have reported having keyless entry in the XLS, but I haven't had any luck. So that's really that. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. If you're a big Sport Trac fan and you like lower trucks, you're in the right place, because I actually got some good news from my school today, and when everything goes to the plan, hopefully either January or late February or mid-February, oh man, so much of this thing's about to change. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a lot of content coming very soon. Basically, I'm going to kind of spoil it, but I will finally be getting my Sport Trac lowered. I mentioned it in episode 2 of Project Explorer. If you don't remember, I made a video just last week of how that series got killed off. And if you want to watch that, you can. I've actually got a playlist with every single Project Explorer episode up until my brief hiatus from YouTube for a little while. So be sure to go and check that out and kind of see why I decided to lower the truck, because a lot of people have been asking me why lower a truck. That's kind of dumb. Basically, in my personal preference, any two-wheel drive truck, if you're going to modify the ride height, it needs to be slammed, and any 4x4 needs to be lifted. I don't like slam 4x4s, and I don't like lifted 4x2s. That's basically my preference. If you guys disagree, cool. That's your preference. I don't really care to try to fight you on your preferences, because it's just not worth my time. I'm not going to judge you for your decisions. But that's kind of that. That's why I decided to lower the truck. And plus, I've always been more of a street car guy than I have been an off-road fan. So that's kind of plays in part of it. Why I decided to lower the truck versus lift it. I mean, a lot of people have just said keep it a stock ride height, but I just quite frankly don't like the stock ride height very much. It gives me a feeling of just being too big. I feel like at times I don't have space to do anything when I know I do, simply because I feel like I'm sitting 10 feet off the ground, even though it's stock ride height. But I'm actually also, quick thing before I end this video, is there's something I wanted to ask you guys. Like I said, I'm going to be getting a pretty nice gift from school here very soon. There's a bird in my garage. Sorry, I'm looking off over there. And I want to know if any of you guys know in the Georgia area of people that can fabricate body kits. Obviously, I've seen some lower tracks recently. One in question is actually trying to sell his, so that's what sucks. I'm not looking forward to hearing that, because I like my lower track friends. But basically, the whole plan with that is to get a body kit made for the truck, because obviously it's going to paint very soon. I need to have a way to give it that more aggressive look and make it look different. Now, the idea for that comes from a truck that'll be on screen right now, which is the SEMA Cobra R Sport Trac. Now, I don't like this bumper as much as just getting a perfect custom one made. I want to do something kind of Cobra inspired with this, or modern Ford inspired, but I don't want to do anything, so drastic it's ugly. I want to do something that still looks Sport Trac, but not, like completely just changing the game kind of stuff where it just looks too much like a Cobra. I want something that kind of gives that Cobra feel, but I don't want anything that goes nuts. But that's basically that. Just if you guys know anyone in Georgia that can do that kind of stuff, preferably I'd like it done on fiberglass. It's a lot cheaper than getting the PVC, like bendable stuff. That'd be the best thing to do, but it's not what I can afford. So if you guys know anybody, hook me up. Just send them, just tell me who it is in the comments, and I'll check it out and everything and see what I like. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed the video. If you're new, leave a like and subscribe for more, because there's a lot more Sport Trac content coming very soon. Like I said, I got a video tomorrow. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys in the next one.
Drama, we just want commas. My team tryna eat, I'm thinking Benihana. Love or hate me, all that shit just made me stronger. We the new school, it's the alma mater. We don't want drama, we don't want drama. We just want the commas, we just want the commas.